Hey, welcome back. It's time to get into a little bit more of the Italian High Renaissance with the iconic Leonardo da Vinci. So let's look at our final painting in this video series, and I bet you might know the title of it. Let me just show you where it's located. All right, here we go. Where you can find this painting, which is in the form of a mural painted on a wall, is in a refectory or a communal dining hall up in northern Italy, in Milan, in a location called Santa Maria delle Grazie. From 1495 to 1498 are the years of execution. Do you happen to recognize it? Well, it has a dining theme, so that's a clue in case you don't happen to know what the painting is. Let me zoom in a little bit closer here, and perhaps you will realize, aha, here we go. It's Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. So here is a little man dressed in his clerical uniform here, giving you a sense of scale. It is a painting that is much larger than the Last Supper. It measures approximately about 14 feet in height by 30 feet across. And what's interesting about it is I've told you that Leonardo absolutely adored working in oil paints. It, of course, was able, the medium itself was part of his secrets for incredible luminosity and chiaroscuro as well. And so it's not surprising, as a guy who was inquisitive, and he was often, a guy who came up with different ideas, different inventions and experiments on his own, that he would say, how can I make this medium happen on a wall? I know everybody uses fresco. Let me try both tempera and oils to accomplish this mural of this famous story of the Last Supper, where Christ, whom you see in the center of the composition, gathers his 12 disciples together to break bread. Obviously, it is something that he's going to introduce with the concept of the bread representing his body and the wine representing his blood, suggesting to all of them that the end is near for him, but also something else. So let me advance the slide to a little better view here. That one of their members, one of the disciples, is going to betray him. So that is the most famous aspect of this story, is this betrayal of somebody who was, among Jesus's inner circle, and yet, for those of you who are familiar with the story, there was a Judas among them, literally a man named Judas, who would take a payoff and betray trade his love for Christ for money instead. So look at this slide. I know you're thinking, wow, Professor Wills, your slides are in terrible condition. Well, the painting is in terrible condition, and that is because of Leonardo's experimenting with oil paints and tempera. It just doesn't have the durability of fresco. And remember, fresco is what Giotto used, for instance, in the Arena Chapel. It's what Michelangelo will later use in the Sistine Chapel. It is durable. It binds with the plaster. It is the choice that goes back to antiquity, and yet Leonardo didn't choose it. Oh, no. So pretty quickly there was deterioration. There was flaking. You can imagine, there's no climate control and the humidity of, summer in Italy. And so that, the medium, the climate, early restoration attempts just resulted in what we have left today. So it is not as wonderful as it once was, but fortunately there's enough there for us to appreciate Leonardo's genius, and they've kind of stabilized everything through modern day conservation techniques. So not surprisingly, we see a very typical high Renaissance composition here. And that means, kind of like what we saw in our Quattrocento era architecture, a very central focus on the most important person being Jesus. And then arranged around him symmetrically are the 12 disciples. So 6 on one side, 6 on the other, and they're broken up into pairs of groups of 3. So you see 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, etc. And what we're seeing as they're gathered at the Last Supper table is as if Christ has just said, one of you is about to betray me. And what's interesting is looking at him, he looks so calm delivering that news, that he has this, he has this awareness that this betrayal has happened. And he knows, of course, ultimately how it will conclude for him with his eventual crucifixion, right? But look at that. Look at that shape. We met it already in Leonardo's Madonna of the Rocks, that triangular pyramid shape that reads calm and stable to the human eye. And that is certainly how he looks, delivering this kind of earth-shaking news. Now, everybody else is reacting pretty much to the news in the way you and I would, right? You see gestures and facial expressions of disbelief, of shock, of horror, right? And upset on all the faces of the disciples, right? So it's a way, again, compartmentalizing these in groups of 3. It helps us see each of them as an individual scenario and expression of this emotion. So it's an interesting contrast between the very calm Jesus and then the emotional, dramatic reactions of his disciples. And that, of course, makes what he said, the poignancy of that so much stronger to us, the audience. What you find too is with Leonardo da Vinci, his talents in rendering the illusion of depth and perspective are done with not just one, but 2 of the techniques we've met already in this class. First of all, some of you might recognize that there's linear perspective employed in the painting. You can see that there's kind of a coffered ceiling going on here, as well as elements on the wall. So all of those orthogonals or diagonals lead to a vanishing point. And yep, Jesus is the vanishing point. You got it. Not unlike what Masaccio did in his Holy Trinity painting. Illusion of depth and distance through atmospheric perspective also. In the views out the trio of windows. The largest window, of course, almost serves like a frame around the head of Jesus, further underscoring his, central importance in the story of the Last Supper as well. Okay, so what's also interesting is the naturalistic lighting in this space, because if I were to back up this slide here, remember, it is a mural in a dining hall. Do you see how the windows are, in reality, on the left-hand side of the room? So the light enters the room from the left to the right. And can you see here how not only is there convincing illusionism of depth and distance, but Leonardo's also reflecting the correct trajectory of that light on the opposite wall in his own painting. All right, so let's pull up a little bit here. I'm going to fast forward that one a little bit here. Revealing my secrets to you. Okay, now a lot of times I'll put this in my classroom up on the screen, and I wish we could do that together, but taking a look at this, it's hard to see because it is grainy. Who do you think Judas is? Now, one part of the story is that Christ says something to the effect of, "The hand of he who betrayeth me is with me on the table." So the hand of the guy who's betraying him is with him on the table. So, you got to look at Christ's hands here. And if you happen to look over here on our left, the open hand of Jesus is mirrored by the open hand of this individual as well. So remember, with Leonardo, gesture has power. It connects figures together compositionally. It conveys relationships. Remember Mary's hand hovering over baby Jesus in the previous painting. But here, these gestures in mirror image connect these two individuals in a certain path or destiny, where Jesus, of course, will ultimately have to be, sacrifice his life for mankind's salvation and redemption, right? And look at Judas here. He's the only one who doesn't seem to be overreacting in any kind of emotional way. He's as cool as a cucumber. And his other hand, it's hard to see in the slide, is clutching his payoff, a money bag. So that is Leonardo's famous painting of the Last Supper. Unfortunately, the condition of it isn't quite as it once was, but there's a lot to learn about the thinking and the sensibility of this Renaissance master, and how he helps to usher in a new era of increasing naturalism in the Italian High Renaissance. All right, have a super day.